the first time since 1972, two of the world's major nuclear powers will no longer be bound by any treaty. From February 5, 2026, no agreement will limit the strategic nuclear arsenals of the United States and Russia. At midnight GMT, the New START treaty officially expired without a replacement, according to the United Nations. As New START lapsed, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev declared that all U.S. Russia arms control agreements now belong to history. Medvedev even hinted that a new era of nuclear uncertainty, or what he called a possible nuclear winter, might follow the treaty's end. Interestingly, it was Medvedev himself who had signed the New START Accord alongside then U.S. President Barack Obama. The agreement, originally designed to last 10 years from 2011 to 2021, was later extended for an additional 5 years, bringing it to 2026. Medvedev's latest remarks came shortly after an official statement from Russia's foreign ministry. In that statement, Moscow said it would act responsibly, but also warned that it would respond decisively to any threats to its national security. Russian Foreign Ministry released a statement on this. It said, and I quote, on September 22, 2025, the President of the Russian Federation Vladimir Putin publicly proposed that the parties to the New START treaty commit to voluntary self-limitations to keep the quantitative ceilings on the relevant weapons specified in the treaty for at least 1 year after the termination of the agreement. However, no formal official response from the United States with regard to the Russian initiative has been received through bilateral channels. Public comments from the U.S. side also give no reason to conclude that Washington is ready to follow the course of action in the field of strategic offensive arms proposed by the Russian Federation. In fact, it means that our ideas have been deliberately left unanswered. This approach seems erroneous and regrettable. From a practical point of view, our country considers such developments as a fact that must be taken into account when determining further Russian policy in this area. In the current circumstances, we assume that the parties to the New START are no longer bound by any obligations or symmetrical declarations in the context of the treaty, including its core provisions, and are in principle free to choose their next steps. In doing so, the Russian Federation intends to act responsibly and in a balanced manner, developing its policy in the field of strategic offensive arms on the basis of a thorough analysis of the U.S. military policy and the overall situation in the strategic sphere. The Russian Federation remains ready to take decisive military-technical measures to counter potential additional threats to the national security. At the same time, our country remains open to seeking politico-diplomatic ways to comprehensively stabilize the strategic situation on the basis of equal and mutually beneficial dialogue solutions, if the appropriate conditions for such cooperation are shaped. Unquote. According to Deutsche Welle, the New START treaty had limited each side to no more than 1,550 deployed strategic nuclear warheads. Reports suggest that the United States has not yet confirmed whether it will continue to observe these restrictions following the treaty's expiration. The United Nations described the lapse of the agreement as a dangerous moment for global peace and security. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres cautioned that the risk of nuclear weapon use is now at its highest point in decades. In 1972, the SALT-I and ABM treaties marked the beginning of formal limits on nuclear arms between the superpowers. During the Cold War, a series of treaties set strict caps on missiles, warheads, and missile defense systems. In 1987, the INF Treaty made history by eliminating an entire class of nuclear missiles for the first time. In 1991, START-I ushered in major, verifiable reductions to the world's largest nuclear arsenals. In 2010, the New START agreement emerged as the final framework keeping US and Russian nukes in check. In 2026, New START expires, ending all binding limits on nuclear weapons for the first time in over 50 years. The end of the treaty came after repeated but unsuccessful efforts to extend it, as geopolitical mistrust between Russia and the West deepened. President Vladimir Putin had earlier proposed a one-year extension of the deal in a bid to preserve strategic stability between the two nuclear superpowers. It's worth recalling that Putin's aide, Yuri Ushakov, had also stated that Moscow remained open to negotiations with the United States. The Russian president noted that tomorrow, February 5, marks the expiration of the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. As you know, on September 22, 2025, we proposed to the Americans that they extend the central quantitative limits for 1 year as voluntary self-restraints. However, we have not received an official response from the Americans. Vladimir Putin stressed that in this situation, we will act in a measured and responsible manner based on a thorough analysis of the overall security situation. We remain open to seeking negotiation channels and ensuring strategic stability. U.S. President Donald Trump initially welcomed the idea of extending the nuclear arms treaty, but later called for a broader and more inclusive agreement. Trump insisted that any future arms control deal must also include China, a proposal that both Beijing and Moscow firmly rejected. Officials in Washington pointed to China's rapidly expanding nuclear arsenal as one of their primary security concerns. Beijing, however, refused to participate, arguing that its nuclear stockpile is far smaller than those of the United States and Russia. Moscow, for its part, maintained that a trilateral treaty was unnecessary and could potentially disrupt the existing strategic balance. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasized Beijing's readiness to deepen its strategic partnership with Moscow amid the shifting global landscape. Over the past year, President Putin and I have met twice, guiding China-Russia relations into a new stage of development. The year 2026 marks the opening year of China's 15th five-year plan, during which China will take a more proactive approach to expanding high-level opening up. We should seize these historic opportunities, deepen strategic coordination and demonstrate a more proactive sense of responsibility as major countries, so as to ensure that China-Russia relations continue to move forward along the right path and achieve sustained development. European leaders have urged both nations to show restraint, warning that unchecked nuclear competition could ignite a new arms race.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.